Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today is the Sunday of Jesus' triumphant entry, and that's why we came here to the Mount of Olives, because we are going to follow his steps, the path where Jesus passed riding on the white donkey, and we will walk through the Kidron Valley until we reach the Golden Gate, which is closed these days, but we will have exclusive access to the inside of the gate, and you will be able to see the place where many biblical prophecies have been fulfilled and will still be fulfilled. So if you are ready, let's get started. Today is a very special day. It is the day we remember Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, which begins his last week here in the city. And that's why we have a special video today and next Sunday for the Easter special. But now it's time for us to start following Jesus' steps and discover many wonderful things. Jesus lived in Galilee, and he came to Jerusalem especially for Passover celebrations, the Jewish Easter. And he makes a gigantic journey from Galilee, passing through Jericho. He then stays in Bethany, which is the other side of the Mount of Olives. And then he starts to climb the mountain until he reaches Bethphage, where he gets on a donkey, and he makes this whole descent that we are going to do together now. This is the beginning of the descent, but if we had arrived here 2,000 years ago, in the times of Jesus, of course, we wouldn't see stone staircases or anything paved. All of this was dirt. So let's imagine what this place looked like. And we can see that there are still many olive trees, and they are what give this whole mountain its name. You can see that the path we are going down is special because there are no tombs here. On both sides there is a large Jewish cemetery, a 3,000-year-old cemetery. This means that this cemetery already existed when Jesus passed through here. There are also very important people buried here. Inside here, under this house, is what is called the Tomb of the Prophets. Among these prophets buried here are Haggai, Malachi, and Zechariah, the same Zechariah who wrote the prophecies about the triumphant entry. And this path is very important that there are no tombs on it, because people needed to be pure to enter the temple of Jerusalem. And if Jesus were to pass through the middle of the tombs in the cemetery, perhaps someone might look and consider him impure and try to prevent his entry into the temple. But we know that this did not happen. On the contrary, when he went down this path, crowds and crowds began to gather here to celebrate the arrival of Jesus, singing psalms. Ana Adonai Oshiana, Ana Adonai Yatzlichana, Baruch Abba Beshem Adonai, Berachnuchem mi Beit Adonai, Salvanus agora Chipidzimus. O Lord, we ask you, prosper us. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. We bless you from the house of the Lord. And the crowd also shouted, Hosanna, Hosanna, which comes from the Hebrew Oshiana, which means save us. And the crowd was growing with every step of Jesus. Some of the people had already been following him from Galilee. Others joined in Jericho after he healed the blind, and even more after Jesus resurrected Lazarus in Bethany. And even more people here on the Mount of Olives itself. He really descended with a large crowd. And here we can see part of this Jewish cemetery that we talked about. Here there are tombs from 3,000 years ago and also more modern tombs. This area here that we are seeing are precisely the more modern tombs, and the further down we go, the older the sepulchres. But what we came to do here are the steps of Jesus when he was mounted on the little donkey. And imagine the scene. He comes down here, the crowd singing and rejoicing at his arrival, but Jesus stops all this joyful moment and he moves to a side location to cry. And we are going to go in there now and understand why Jesus cries at such a joyful moment. We are now at the Dominus Flevit complex, which keeps this name because it means the Lord wept. Jesus comes here and cries because what he sees from here really moves him. And we are now going to that same view. This is one of the things I find most beautiful here in the Holy Land. It's the nations of the world gathering here where everything really happened. Here we see a group of Filipinos passing by and going to visit the church. And I also find it very interesting that the priest who takes care of this place today, he is originally from Iraq. Christians and Jews from all over the world come here to connect. But as I promised the view to you, it's right here. Jesus, he arrives and has this impressive view of the city. But what most caught the eye, without a doubt, was the Temple of Jerusalem, which was exactly where the Dome of the Rock is today. But the Temple of Jerusalem was much taller than the Dome today. And when Jesus arrives here, he sees the city in its splendor, at its peak. But he knows what is going to happen here. He says that famous phrase, "For the days will come upon you, when your enemies will build an embankment against you and surround you, and hem you in on every side, and they will tear you down, you and your children within you, and they will not leave one stone upon another in you." He predicts here the destruction of the city. Even in such a joyful moment of his life, Jesus stops and cries not for him, but for the innocent people of Jerusalem and for all the suffering they are still to endure. He says this in the year 33, and 33 years later, in the year 66, the great Jewish rebellion against the Romans begins, which will culminate in the year 70 with the complete destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem. And that's why the Temple Esplanade will be left empty, and centuries later, the Dome of the Rock will be built on the same site. So here Jesus stops for his joy and cries for the innocents of the city. And I want to take advantage of this location for us to better understand what the Golden Gate is. Here on the eastern side of the city, the wall of Jerusalem and the outer wall of the temple were the same wall. And on this entire eastern wall, there was only one entrance, the Golden Gate. And that's why we know that it is really through this gate that Jesus entered. Does Jesus come down this path riding on a little white donkey? But have you ever stopped to ask why specifically a little white donkey? There are two reasons. The first one is the biblical prophecies. Zechariah, he says that the Messiah will arrive riding on a donkey, as we see in this passage. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout in triumph, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. He is just and endowed with salvation, humble and mounted on a donkey, even on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And the second reason is symbolic. The horse in ancient times, it was an animal, considered a war animal, and the little donkey, it symbolized peace. When Jesus decides here to come with the crowd, enter riding on the little donkey, he shows everyone that he is the Prince of Peace. And remember these words because they connect with the Golden Gate. And this route is also very significant and symbolic because through this same path, the Passover lamb was brought. That is, a few days before Easter, the lamb that would go to the temple to be sacrificed was brought through here. We have now arrived at the lowest part of the Mount of Olives. This place is also known as Gethsemane. And this is where Jesus experiences his last moments of freedom. He will sweat blood and he will receive the kiss of betrayal. But now we are not going to enter Gethsemane together, which is right here. You can see the entrance to the place because Gethsemane is part of our Easter special next week. We are now going to head to the Kidron Valley. And here we see the Golden Gate. Unfortunately, the path as it was, it no longer exists today. And for us to get to the gate, we are going to make a small detour here on the side, but we will get to it and then inside it as well. And we see here between the Golden Gate and the Mount of Olives, a beautiful green valley called the Kidron Valley. In front of us are the walls of the old city of Jerusalem. They were built by the Sultan of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, about 500 years ago. The walls that were here in the times of Jesus were destroyed, but the current walls in this section pass exactly in the same perimeter as the originals. If we entered through the Lion's Gate, we would go straight into the Muslim quarter of the old city of Jerusalem. But instead, we turned here to the left, and we will enter here at Beit el Makris, which you will understand what it is. But here, because it is a Muslim place today, we are going to dress with wider sleeves to respect the local rules. So guys, now that I'm ready, and with my backpack, come with me. See that we are now entering a large Muslim cemetery. And in a little while, we will understand why this cemetery was built. And again, this place is related to biblical prophecies. And in front of us here, walking, we already have a wonderful view of the Mount of Olives from where we came. Wow! Look what's here. I think you can easily identify what we see here. This here is a coffin. Muslims to this day are buried without a coffin. So the body is brought here with the coffin open. So imagine the body wrapped in cloths. It is brought in this coffin, carried by a crowd of people, and then it is buried here, and the coffin is then reused for the next person. This shows that this cemetery remains active to this day. And here we already start to see biblical archaeology sprouting. Look at the wall behind me. It has stones of different sizes. The larger stones that are underneath are the old stones, and the smaller stones are stones that were placed in later times. We have irrefutable archaeological evidence that this was the outer wall of the Jerusalem temple, and that the famous Eastern Gate was also located here, which we see here today, which we also know as the Golden Gate. As you can see, it has been closed. It has been sealed for a long time. The question is why it was closed and also who closed it. This gate was originally closed in the year 810 by the Muslims. With the arrival of the Crusaders, who were Christians, they come and reopen the gate in the year 1102. But shortly after, the Muslims reconquer the city of Jerusalem, and Saladin himself will seal the gate, and it remains closed for a few more centuries until Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent undertakes a major reconstruction of the walls and gates. He also rebuilds the part of the gate that was destroyed and keeps it open. But for a short time, after a short time, he changes his mind and decides to close the gate. But what Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and the Muslim leaders who sealed this gate did not know is that by closing it, they would be fulfilling part of a biblical prophecy. But why did they really close this gate? We can't be sure why. We can't understand and read their thoughts at that time. But there are some reasons we believe why they did this. First is the strategic reason. This gate connects the Temple Mount to the outside of the old city of Jerusalem, so it's the most vulnerable entrance to the Temple Mount. But many believe that the reason they really sealed this gate was precisely because they knew the biblical prophecies that speak of the Messiah's entrance through this place. They speak of the entrance and exit of the divine presence, and also a place where prophets would pass. And also for this reason, this cemetery was probably built, because according to Judaism, priests cannot pass through cemeteries, otherwise they would become impure. So a priest from the people of Israel could not pass here and go directly to the temple, this preventing the entrance. And this reminds me a lot of my childhood. My maternal family, they are descendants of the priests of the Temple of Jerusalem. They are Kohen, part of the tribe of Levi. And I remember that when I grew up, my grandfather Jacob never, ever entered cemeteries. So I grew up hearing this. My family cannot enter cemeteries precisely because of this biblical prohibition. And as my family knew this, also the Muslims who built this cemetery knew that this here would be a hindrance to the entrance of priests and part of the people of Israel. And now I want to take advantage that we are here in front of the Golden Gate and read with you the biblical prophecies that were fulfilled in this place, mainly due to its closure. So he made me return to the outer gate of the sanctuary that looks to the east, which was closed. And the Lord said to me, "This gate must remain closed and should not be opened. No one can enter through it. It must remain locked, because the Lord, the God of Israel, entered through it. The prince is the only one who can enter and sit inside to eat the bread in the presence of the Lord. He will enter through the entrance portico and will leave the same way." See that Ezekiel wrote this prophecy 2,600 years ago, long before the birth of Islam, long before Islam arrived here. And when the gate was still open, he writes the prophecy saying that in the future it would be closed and that one day it would reopen. So at this moment the gate is closed, but we know from the prophecies that it will reopen at the right time. When we understand the history and importance of the Golden Gate, we understand even better what happened on Palm Sunday. Jesus doesn't choose this gate at random. There's a very important reason why he enters through here. There's clearly a geographical issue when we see the geographical connection of the Mount of Olives, the Kidron Valley. This is the geographically closest gate. But most people who took this path didn't enter through here. People took the path, but then they diverted and entered through the southern gates, through the Huldah gates. That was the busy gate where many people entered. Almost no one used this gate here. And it's interesting that Jesus indeed chooses to come this way. And the reason is obviously the fulfillment of the biblical prophecies that we read in Ezekiel. But there's also another reason. Through this gate was where the high priest took out the ashes of the red heifer sacrifice. The heifer that was used to purify all the people, the ashes were brought through here, and also through here, the scapegoat was taken out. Once a year on Yom Kippur, 2 animals were sacrificed. One animal is what we call the scapegoat, and the high priest took it from inside the temple, took it out through this gate, and took it to the desert. And the death of this animal is what atoned for the sins of all the people. So through this gate passed the purification and atonement of sins. And now we're going to get very close to the gate, but of course we're not going to cross through it, since it's sealed until the day of its reopening. We are now just a few meters from the gate. See how close we are. We can't get any closer because there are tombs here, and obviously out of respect we don't climb on them, and also because there's this fence that prevents us from getting closer. But we are exactly next to where Jesus passes on the day of the triumphant entry, which is precisely this Sunday today. And how do we know that it was really this gate? Because the Bible tells us so. The Bible tells us that he makes a triumphant entry and he goes directly into the temple, as we read in this passage. And Jesus entered Jerusalem into the temple, and having seen everything around. As we mentioned before, the gate has been destroyed and rebuilt several times throughout history, and therefore not everything we see here is original. But we are indeed at the same level as that time. What happens is that the floor in biblical times was much lower. But at that time, there was a large staircase that went up to the gate. So the stairs went up here, and then inside here, there was another staircase that continued upwards. This means that the gate is indeed in the same place. And we have around here, as we mentioned, old stones that are literally from the times of Jesus. And here we can see them even better. So these stones saw Jesus crossing through this place. We leave here the Golden Gate from its outer part, and now we are going together to know the inner part. Again, a place of very difficult access. And today we are going to have these exclusive images from the gate known as Char Rahamim, the Gate of Mercy, the Golden Gate. It has so many names, Char Shushan, but there is one name it does not have. I often see people calling this gate the Beautiful Gate, but it is not the same gate. The Beautiful Gate, where the book of Acts 3 tells us there was a great healing miracle, was an inner gate of the temple, also known as the Nicanor Gate. And the name also makes a lot of sense, the Beautiful Gate, because it was the most beautiful, the most well-crafted of all the gates of the old city. They were beautiful bronze doors brought from Alexandria in Egypt. So let's make it very clear here. The Golden Gate is very important, but it is not the gate of the beautiful gate. To access the inside of the Golden Gate, we first need to climb the Temple Mount. So we are now going to go around the entire mount to be able to climb it. So come with me because the time is coming. Wow, look what we see here. Every time I come to this place, I really get breathless. Beyond the historical and biblical importance of this place, the beauty of the Dome of the Rock today, which is over 80 kilos of gold, is truly impressive. But let's get there and see this up close. Here we can already see the entrance to the building that we cannot enter. But we can admire its beauty and remember what was here 2,000 years ago. Notice that next to the Dome of the Rock, there is another small dome, a grey dome. It is called Kipput Ashal Shelet, and it marks the geographical center of the Temple Mount, exactly the middle of this gigantic platform. But we know that the Holy of Holies was not in the center, but it was closer to the western wall, which today we know as the Wailing Wall. And that's why out of the 4 walls, 3 of them remain accessible to this day. But we especially use the western wall, the Wailing Wall, to pray because that is the wall closest to the Holy of Holies. In the background, we can already see the Mount of Olives where we started today's journey, and we can see exactly the path of the triumphant entrance, the path we took. And Jesus descends this path surrounded by people, branches, that great biblical moment. And when Jesus enters, crosses through the Golden Gate, he comes face to face exactly in this place. But as we know, he doesn't see the Golden Dome, but rather he sees all the splendor of the Jerusalem temple. And now we have seen exactly the path that Jesus took from the triumphant entrance to the temple, and right in the middle is the Golden Gate. Nowadays there are many trees here, and so they block our view a bit, but in biblical times there was not a single tree here on the Temple Mount, only the temple itself and the buildings at the end. And here, this gate that we see is the famous Golden Gate, the Gate of Mercy. We are also speaking a little lower now because there are prayers inside the Golden Gate, and in a little while when they finish, we will have exclusive access. You will have unique images of what the Golden Gate looks like from the inside and the archaeological evidence of this place from the time of the first temple of Jerusalem. The old city of Jerusalem has 8 gates. 7 of them are open and we use them in our daily lives, which are the Lion's Gate, the Damascus Gate, the New Gate, the Jaffa Gate, the Zion Gate, and the Dung Gate. And the 8th gate is the Golden Gate, and it is the only one among all that is sealed. When we talk about the Golden Gate, we're not just talking about an archway where people entered the city. It was a huge complex with a large internal hall, and that's exactly where we're entering now. Look how imposing these columns in front of us are. Look at their height. Do you believe that the gate was originally built by King Solomon? And we can see in the background these 2 columns that don't fit very well with the rest of the construction. It is precisely believed that these are the original parts from the time of the first temple, and the rest is a mix of various historical periods. And look where we are exactly. We see the 2 arches drawn in front of us. We were seeing them from the outside, and precisely these are the stones that sealed, closed, and do not allow anyone to enter the city and the temple through this gate these days. And there is one more very important place that I want to show you, and it is in that direction and is also linked to the presence of Jesus in this place. I just saw something that hurts my heart a bit. We are seeing all these modern stones from the works that the Muslims have done here in recent years. But we can see there a column, a marble column, probably from the time of the Second Temple of Jerusalem. This here is a piece of unimaginable archaeology, very valuable. And here by the current local authorities, they treat this here in any way. And it really is very difficult to see here the neglect that often happens with archaeology. But personal archaeology does not lie, no matter how often they try to erase the history of this place. The history is literally written here in stone so that no one forgets. We see here the meeting of the south wall with the eastern wall, and the point where they join is called the pinnacle. And the pinnacle is important because Jesus was brought here by the tempter, by Satan himself. And here one of the 3 temptations of Jesus was made, as we can hear in this passage. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here. For it is written that he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." And Jesus said to him, "It is also written, you shall not tempt the Lord your God." And now we leave the Temple Mount. And the last place we are going to visit today is here at the Davidson Archaeological Park, where the original stairs of the Jerusalem temple are located. So when most of the people went up to the temple, they didn't go up through the special gate like Jesus did. They came here through these stairs and went up to the Hulda gates.